Okay, so the point of this video in a series of videos surrounding PPP uh, loan fraud indictment, which I'm currently the subject of in the Middle District of Florida, surrounding PPP loan applications I took out during 2020 and 2021 with respect to two businesses, two restaurants that I owned in the state of Florida. This screen here shows at the top two companies, two limited liability companies or LLCs, which I was an owner. On the left upper part, you'll see that first company is Beachway Restaurants LLC, which was doing business as South Beach Grill, a full service oceanfront restaurant that was located in St. Augustine, Florida, in Crescent Beach. On the right, you'll see a company called Beachway Restaurants 2 LLC, which was doing business as Santos Pizza of Jensen in Jensen Beach, Florida. So during 2020, when the federal government created the payroll protection program as part of the CARES Act, on March 27th of 2020, the First Draw PPP loan program was born. They didn't call it the First Draw, obviously. It was just called the PPP loan program at the time because there was no second. Uh, on the left in blue, you'll see the First Draw PPP loan that I applied for with Valley Bank of St. Augustine on May 5th, 2020, was approved for an amount of $310,497. And on the right, you'll see that 2 days afterwards, on May 7th, 2020, I applied for a First Draw PPP loan program for Santos Pizza of Jensen, and that was approved for an amount of $67,602. So here, with the yellow highlight, those are the two First Draw loans, First Draw PPP loans that were taken out in May of 2020, 2 days apart. You will also see that the second draw loans in blue, the second draw PPP loan program was created by the Economic Aid Act in 2021. And that is what created the second draw program for PPP loans. There was a second draw PPP loan that was applied for, approved, and funded for South Beach Grill on with an application of February 3rd, 2021, in the amount of $408,499. No second draw PPP loan was ever applied for, approved, or funded for Santos Pizza of Jensen. So you can see that there were three total PPP loans taken, two first draw loans in May 2020, and one second draw loan for South Beach Grill only in February of 2021. No second draw existed for Santos Pizza. So the indictment from the federal government has problems with these two PPP loans. Here in red, the $67,602 first draw PPP loan for Santos Pizza obtained on May 7th, 2020, and the second draw PPP loan for South Beach Grill applied for on February 3rd, 2021, in the amount of $408,499. So again, here you this loan, the first draw PPP loan for South Beach Grill for $310,497 obtained on May 5th, 2020. The very first loan applied for, the government has no problem with it. They claim that it was applied for properly, and they also have obtained information on how the money was used subsequently and have found that there's no wrongdoing and it was applied properly for permissible and authorized PPP loan expenses. You can see here in this slide that count one of the two count federal criminal indictment states that this loan of 67,602 was obtained using electronic means, was obtained fraudulently, and is therefore the subject of wire fraud. And the second count of wire fraud relates to this loan, the $408,499 second draw South Beach loan. There is no count of wire fraud for the May 5th, the first loan for 310,497, and there's nothing to discuss on the second draw loan for Santos Pizza because does not exist. None was applied for. Again, let's refer to the indictment. The indictment states that I engaged in a scheme and artifice to defraud, and they state that that scheme began no later than May of 2020. And it was so here are the loans again. We're isolating the first draw loans that occurred on May 2020. The first draw loan for South Beach Grill obtained on May 5th, 2020, and the first draw loan occurred 2 days later on May 7th, 2020 for 67,602. They say the scheme began here. However, the federal government only states that there was a problem with the May 7th loan and no problem with the May 5th, 2020 loan. But they say this is the beginning of the scheme and artifice that I engaged in knowingly in May 2020. Scheme to defraud. However, the first loan I took again for 310,497 was obtained properly and used properly. The second draw loan, or the second first draw loan for 67,602 was fraudulently obtained, according to the government. And they say this was a scheme to obtain money and property. Here you can see that the first draw loan on May 5th for South Beach Grill for $310,497 was obtained with Valley Bank St. Augustine, and the first draw loan of 67,602 for Santos Pizza that was obtained 2 days later on May 7th, 2020 was also obtained with Valley Bank of St. Augustine. Again, they're both obtained with the same bank 2 days apart. However, the first draw loan on May 5th, no problem with that. The government says it was obtained properly and applied for properly. Funds were used properly. However, the loan obtained with, again, 2 days later with Valley Bank of St. Augustine for Santos Pizza for $67,602 was fraudulently obtained. Here we go. Coincidentally, the employees of St. Augustine's Valley Bank branch, where the two first draw loans were applied for, approved, and obtained 2 days apart, May 5th, 2020, and on May 7th, 2020, were obtained with the same branch employees, Tricia Nelson, Risa Walls, and Andrew Harmon. To recap, government is claiming that both first draw PPP loans obtained in May 2020, only 2 days apart, for South Beach Grill and Santos Pizza, which were obtained with the same bank, Valley Bank of St. Augustine, and in cooperation with the same three bank employees, were a scheme and a artifice to defraud. So, in other words, both first draw PPP loans in May 2020, only 2 days apart for South Beach Grill and Santos Pizza, were obtained with the same type of first draw PPP application form The SBA 2483 form. Here you see the version of the federal government's SBA 2483 application form in blank. This is the top of the form that the SBA drafted and published in April of 2020. This is the form that was used by South Beach Grill and Santos Pizza to apply for its first draw loan. It was also the same SBA 2483 application form version that was used by all applicants for the first draw PPP loans that occurred in May of 2020. Let's make notice that the SBA published a total of 9 different versions of this form subsequently throughout 2020 and into 2021. But this is the variation that was used by South Beach Grill and Beachway restaurants to apply for the first draw PPP loans. This here is the DocuSigned version of the first draw PPP loan for Beachway restaurants, South Beach Grill. You can see here in the upper right, there's an OMB control number 3245-0407. That OMB control number appeared on all 9 versions of the SBA's first draw 2483 application form. So no matter which variation version you see, you're going to find that the OMB control number is identical. So this form here shows you application was by Beachway Restaurants LLC, which was located at 45 Cubbage Road, St. Augustine. And see that the average monthly payroll that it asked for in this box was 124,199. On the box to the right, it tells you to simply multiply that number times 2.5. We don't have to fool around with the addition of any EIDL loan because Beachway Restaurants for South Beach Grill never obtained any EIDL loan. So we simply take this number and multiply it times 2.5, and in this box to the right, you get $310,497.50. Now we see a box to the right here in gray that says number of employees. That's all it says in plain writing is number of employees. Beachway Restaurants listed 69 here in this box. Now, this slide shows the instructions found on that SBA 2483 application form. These are the instructions for completing the form. There's nothing else on the form if you inspect it that shows any instructions in completing it. This is a screenshot of the instructions in their entirety. You can see here highlighted in yellow. It says for purposes of calculating, quote, average monthly payroll, most applicants will use the average monthly payroll for 2019, excluding costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. And here it's highlighted a little bit larger to be able to see it. But again, it's clear. It says for purposes of calculating average monthly payroll, most applicants will use the average monthly payroll for 2019, including costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. Then it goes to talk about seasonal businesses, but it will say that the seasonal businesses will use average monthly payroll for the time period between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, excluding costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. We don't need to go into the new businesses. South Beach Grill was not a new business. And even though it did have South Beach Grill did have seasonality to its business, it still operated year round. So the highlight in yellow is what I interpreted to apply to South Beach Grill for the First Draw PPP Loan 2483 application form. Here we see a screenshot of the summary page that ADP, the payroll processing company for South Beach Grill for 2019, provided as part of the CARES package application that it generated on its website. So I simply downloaded this CARES package, SBA PPP monthly payroll cost from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019 form when submitting the payroll to Valley Bank of St. Augustine. Now we can this is a screenshot of the summary. You can see here that under the average, it gives you an average total here. And if we go across here, you see the number 69, and the column lists the number of employees paid. So this is the calculation by ADP of the average number of employees per month for South Beach Grill during 2019. And here left, you see they have a calculated number which is titled SBA payroll cost. So ADP intended this SBA payroll cost number to be the cost number you're supposed to use to calculate your average monthly payroll for 2019 for purposes of applying for the First Draw PPP loan and calculating the loan amount. And here you can see that SBA payroll cost average number is $124,199.69, which matches here. You see 124,199 listed on the First Draw PPP application under average monthly payroll for South Beach Grill, and the number of employees 69 matches figure provided by ADP here for the average number of employees paid during 2019. In other words, it's clear from the payroll records and the instructions on the SBA 2483 form itself that the borrower was supposed to list its average monthly payroll from prior year. That prior year was 2019 for First Draw PPP loans applied for in May of 2020. The federal government has alleged that I fraudulently completed the application for Santos Pizza. Now, if I listed clearly the number of employees as being the 2019 average for South Beach Grill on the First Draw SBA 2483 application form, which we can clearly see from the payroll records from ADP that match up to its 2483 application form, why would I have not also intended to list the average number of employees for Santos Pizza as that being during calendar year 2019? It stands to reason that if I did applications with the same bank, Valley Bank of St. Augustine, and I worked with the same three bank employees on both applications, Tricia Nelson, Risa Walls, and Andrew Harmon, that the applications for each First Draw loan, the South Beach Grill First Draw PPP loan, and the Santos Pizza First Draw PPP Loan would have been under the same presumptions, and they were. So if we take a look at the Santos Pizza calculation here, what was placed on the Santos Pizza First Draw 2483 application form under the average number of employees was intended to be the average number of employees that Santos Pizza employed during calendar year 2019, and that number was 25. And that calculation can be seen here. This slide shows a biweekly payroll for Santos Pizza during 2019, and it shows each biweekly payroll period with the beginning and end date, and it shows the number of employees that were paid in each of those biweekly pay dates. So if you go down now to the bottom here, you can see the total employees paid for Santos Pizza for each biweekly payroll period. The total comes to the number 600, and we have 25 biweekly pay periods for the year. 600 divided by 25 gives you an average 2019 employee figure 24. I did not include myself in any of those biweekly pay periods. You include me, employee of the company, at each of those brings the average from 24 to 25. Also, if you go back here, you see the first pay period, the first biweekly pay period began January 14th of the year, and that's simply because the prior biweekly pay period started on the last day, December 31st of 2018. If you were to include the biweekly pay period from December 31st, 2018 to January 13th, 2019, this average 2019 employee figure goes to 25. On the application form, it's listed as 25. So however you calculate it, but this is not a significant difference, 24 to 25 for the average number of employees. So the government is alleging that I fraudulently completed the second draw PPP loan application form because it says I intended to represent the figure of 25 as the number of employees that Santos Pizza had on May 7th of 2020. I did not intend the figure placed on the number of employees box on the SBA 2483 First Draw PPP loan application form for Beachway 2, Santos Pizza, on May 7, 2020, to represent the then number of employees for the business on the date of application any more than I intended the figure that was placed in the number of employees box on the 2483 First Draw PPP loan application form for Beachway, South Beach Grill, to represent the then number of employees for South Beach Grill on May 5th, 2020. In fact, I intended the figure placed on the number of employees box on the SBA 2483 First Draw PPP loan application form for Beachway Restaurants 2 LLC on May 7, 2020, to represent the average number of employees for Santos Pizza during calendar year 2019. Just as I intended the figure that was placed in the number of employees box on the SBA 2483 First Draw PPP loan application form for Beachway Restaurants LLC to represent the average number of employees for South Beach Grill during calendar year 2019. However, the federal government has indicted me on allegations of having fraudulently completed the second draw application for Santos Pizza. And their allegation is that I completed that one representing the then number of employees as 25, but 2 days earlier, the application that I completed for South Beach Grill with Valley Bank is no problem. How do you reconcile those two very different positions by the federal government? Those positions being that on May 5th of 2020, the application that was completed for South Beach Grill, which represents 69 employees being the average number of employees, when in fact South Beach Grill did not have 69 employees on May 5th of 2020, as the business had been closed temporarily during April of 2020 as a result of the mandates by the Florida state government during the pandemic, which required the closure of its dining rooms. South Beach Grill had only operated on a minimal basis, serving takeout or pickup business during April. The dining rooms were in fact closed during that time period. However, the same mandates applied to Santos Pizza of Jensen. Its dining rooms were forcibly closed by mandate on April 1st of 2020. That business was temporarily closed completely as there was not enough pickup business at Santos Pizza to warrant trying to stay open during April. And that business was also suffering from a roof leak, which had been persistent for the previous 6 month period as the entire plaza was suffering from a deteriorated roof. And its landlord, John Katzuk Sr. Of Pennsylvania, uh, refused to replace the plaza for many months. The roof leaks persisted. He had attempted to hire some fly by night, as he called them, roofers to patch the problem months earlier unsuccessfully. The roof leaks persisted during the pandemic. Mr. Katzok refused to replace the roof and then revealed he did not even have insurance as a landlord for the building and to replace that roof. So Santos Pizza was temporarily closed as a result of mandates and a leaking roof during April of 2020. On May 7th, I applied for the First Draw PPP loan of $67,602 based on the 2019 payroll figures and average number of employees paid per pay period. With Valley Bank of St. Augustine. So these two loans you see here, these two First Draw loans occurred 2 days apart with the same bank, same employees. Tricia Nelson, Risa Walls, Andrew Harmon. They were applied for with the same format, SBA 2483 application form. The average monthly payrolls that were listed on each SBA 2483 form were reflective of each business's 2019 calendar payroll, and that number was calculated from each respective payroll company. South Beach Grill, using ADP's figures. Santos Pizza of Jensen used its 2019 calendar year figures that were provided by its payroll company, Heartland Payroll Systems. Same presumptions were used when applying for each form, and the number of employees placed in the number of employees box on the 2483 application form was meant to represent each restaurant's average number of employees per pay period in calendar year 2019, not meant to represent a screenshot of the then number of employees each business had on the day the applications were completed in May of 2020. The federal government is mistaken. It misrepresents its own federal laws with respect to the 2483 First Draw PPP loan applications. not just the ones that I completed in cooperation with Valley Bank for the First Draw PPP loans for South Beach Grill and Santos Pizza of Johnson. The federal government's mistaken in those representations, the representations that the average monthly payroll figures were meant to represent the then average monthly payrolls for each business, or the then number of employees active and employed at each business in May of 2020. Neither the monthly payroll figures or the number of employees figures are meant to represent the then numbers for the businesses. And you can see by referencing again the forms here where you see the boxes where the borrower is to list the average monthly payroll. It doesn't state which year you're supposed to put there. However, the instructions for the forms clearly state that the most borrowers will use calendar year 2019, the prior year. And to the right, where you see the number of employees box, there is nothing whatsoever contained in the SBA 2483 application form instructions that references what the borrower is supposed to enter into that form. So there is ambiguity to what the borrower is to enter there. Many people mistakenly assumed that the borrower is to enter the number of employees it has on the date it completes the form. Many banks also were confused by what is supposed to go in the number of employees box. And the federal government is seems to be confused about its own laws and about the interim final rules that the SBA published, as well as the instructions contained in the 2483 form, which do not state in any manner whatsoever which calculation a borrower is to use when it enters the number in the number of employees box. The federal government has presumed mistakenly that what is represented by the figure listed in the number of employees box is meant to represent the then number of employees the business or restaurant in this case had when it applied for the PPP loan in May 2020. That is incorrect. It's legally incorrect, and it's an incorrect presumption by the federal government. What is reasonable is that if on the left of the form is asking the borrower to enter an average monthly payroll figure, and that the instructions in the form state clearly that that average monthly payroll figure is meant to represent the borrower's 2019 calendar year average monthly payroll, that the figure on the right for the number of employees should correspond to that 2019 average monthly payroll figure, and it should be a representation of the average number of employees of the business during 2019, not the number of employees or the then number of employees of the business when the form is completed. I assumed rationally and reasonably that if the form itself is asking for the average monthly payroll figure and the instructions in that form state that borrower is going to normally use 2019 calendar year, then the number of employees that it is asking for is the number of employees on average during 2019. It is not rational to take the government's position to say that any borrower, including myself, meant to represent the number of employees listed on the 2483 form as the number of employees the business had on the date it completed the form.